I'm here with James Power. James is Ireland's youngest ever pro boxer, and he's 6-0 with 5 knockout victories. His most recent win came in the first round on September 11th in Hungary. James, I'd like to say thanks for joining me and congrats on your recent win.
Appreciate you having me, man. Thank you.
So first of all, I'd just like to ask you, how was the fight? Because while we know it was a first round knockout, there hasn't been a lot of clips on the fight online. I was just wondering if you could give us your sort of breakdown on how it went overall.
I haven't been able to fight since the pandemic started, so it was really good to get back in there. It's been 22 months now since I last fought, so it was just about, knocking the ring rust off, getting things back flowing. It was a first round stoppage. I would have liked to have some rounds under my belt, but the opportunity came. I landed clean, and that's how this sport goes. But it was brilliant to be back. It felt incredible to be back doing what I love again, and I felt grateful to be there.
Yeah, and it seemed to come together on incredibly short notice. You first posted about having fight news on Instagram on September 7th, and then on the 10th you were weighed in and ready to fight. How did the fight come together so quickly?
So the promoter I fought with before reached out to one of my team and said he was looking for fighters. My name got put in there, not that long before. We didn't have much time to prepare, but it was just about getting back in, and I was never going to pass up that opportunity, especially when I felt comfortable with the promotion. I was happy with the opponent I was shown, so there was no way I was going to turn that down. With COVID, I've kind of learned over the past year, nothing is certain until it happens. And, I've had a few fights that should have happened that didn't because of COVID restrictions and bans and things. So I didn't want to be announcing anything too soon. But when I stepped on the scales, I said, you know what, it looks like the fight's still going ahead. We made weight. I put up the post, but even then, it wasn't 100% certain until I actually got into the ring the following night. But yeah, it's just about not announcing things when they mightn't be happening for sure anymore, and that's something we'll have to, I suppose, keep doing as my career goes on.
After a victory like that, it must feel like you've earned a right to relax a bit. Can you tell us what the last week has been like for you since notching that victory?
Yeah, so the last week, I've been training, kind of pulled back on the boxing training a little bit, just leaving everything, I suppose, heal, get the body back to normal. I'm still in the gym, still running, every day. I've been in the gym 2 to 3 hours now. But it's not been more focused on boxing. It's more a relaxing week for me, even though we are still working hard. Monday, I'll be back in the gym, working with a coach, pad work, sparring, things like that, preparing for the next one, and hopefully be out again very soon.
As I understand, in 2020, you planned to relocate to Los Angeles before COVID got in the way. And I know that since then, you've trained at Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand and SPG Cork City. So now that you've gotten that recent win, what do you think is the next chapter of the James Power story, so to speak?
So I signed with a management in Los Angeles in the very beginning of 2020. I came home for 2 weeks while my visa was processing, and during that time, COVID kicked off. Travel bans were put in place immediately, and my visa was put on hold. Now, since that time, February 2020, there's nothing my management or I could do to change that situation. We just have to wait it out, and it's out of our hands. During, I suppose, the past year, I relocated to Thailand and trained at Tiger Muay Thai, and that was an incredible experience. I learned so much from that, and I kind of made family out there in a way. All the fighters and things, I kind of see a lot of them as brothers and sisters. Now I got that fight under my belt again and got things going. The plan is to be back in America before the end of the year. That's the schedule, and unless this pandemic throws another curveball our way, I will land stateside in the next few months. Once I get there, I'll immediately start working with my coach again, and just get the ball rolling. Once I get in the ring, things shouldn't stop. That momentum is there. I'd like to get a few fights before the end of this year, have good momentum going into 2022, and just keep taking the steps that I need to take to catch the eye of a large promoter, and take the necessary steps in my career as well to get my name out there, expand my profile, and step up in the rankings, prove that that's where I belong.
So I asked you earlier where you think the next chapter of the James Power story is going to take you. Next, I want to ask you, where do you think you'll be in 10 years?
Hopefully still doing this sport, still doing what I love. Waking up each morning with the intention to head down to the gym, work hard, learn, improve my coach, and take the next step in my journey. That's the life I've dreamed about my entire life. My childhood, my teenage years, and now my young adulthood has been focused on just doing this sport. So in 10 years' time, I'd love to be in 10 years' time, I should be not I should be, because I'll never say I should. In 10 years' time, I hope to be at the top of my game, made a big name for myself, being successful in the sport, and be happy. This sport brings me joy, and the day I don't love it anymore is the day I won't do it anymore. So the goal in 10 years' time will be to be happy doing what I love.
You said earlier that one of the things the pandemic has taught you is that nothing is certain with regards to, I suppose, a lot of things. But is there anything else that having such a long layoff so early in your career has taught you?
Yeah, so it's not ideal. Not ideal in any sense. For most of that year, I kind of took my mind off of boxing. The village I was in when we had the 5 kilometer, I suppose, travel ban and all that things, there was no hope of me going to a gym. There was no possibility of me continuing boxing training and fighting. So I switched my focus to ultra running, and I got big into that. I completed a lot of ultras, and that has taught me a lot. Taught me a lot about my own body, my own awareness, and mental resilience as well, because the training involved the events. It just kind of fortitude a different part of me that boxing wouldn't have touched on, or maybe wouldn't have focused on as much. So I've learned a lot over the past 2 years. They weren't dead years, they were pretty active. Just getting to know myself as well, trying to grow and learn as a person as well as an athlete. A big thing the pandemic has, I suppose, highlighted to me was who am I without boxing? Because especially over the past few years, the focus has been completely on me with boxing. Every conversation I've had to do with training, boxing, or when's your next fight. Every post kind of resonates around training and things like that. So when that was gone, it was almost like part of my identity was gone. And a lot of athletes, a lot of people in general, I think, struggled with that for the earlier few months, where everything that their lives revolved around was now just taken away in an instant, and they had to figure out who they were without those things. So a lot of things went wrong during the past 2 years. A lot of things I suppose be angry towards and frustrated, but a lot of good came out of those 2 years too, and you can't lose sight of that.
As I said at the start of this year, you spent some time at Tiger Muay Thai and SBG Cork City, which are both MMA gyms and have some phenomenal talent coming out of them. After spending some time at those gyms, I know that boxing is your passion, but is there any part of you that looks at it and says, maybe a crossover in the future?
Yeah, so during my time in Tiger, I was obviously training with a lot of incredible MMA fighters, Muay Thai fighters, wrestlers, people from all different backgrounds. I would have been the only sole boxer there. So that was very interesting. It was a very interesting experience. Personally, I won't be crossing over into any other domain anytime soon. But it was very interesting to train with those athletes. They all have different, I suppose, strengths, different weaknesses, different mindsets. Wrestlers especially, some of the strongest minds in any sport, some of the toughest people there are. Then you have BJJ, who are just absolute animals. You have the Muay Thai fighters who are just workhorses, you know. And training with those, I picked up a lot from those people that I'm going to use, I suppose, in my own career going forward. The strength and conditioning coaches in Tiger taught me so much as well about my own body, my own training, and that has definitely made me a better athlete. I think my performance on Saturday night has shown that. I'm a lot stronger than I was, I suppose, in past fights. The 2 years as well allow me to mature. So I'm no longer just a school kid in the ring. I'm more of a man. SPG Cork, the lads there are absolute gents, you know, brilliant people. I didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this fight, and SPG Cork is near to my home. So, like, I have to thank Liam O'Griffin and the lads there for the rounds of sparring to get me prepared, I suppose, in as little time as possible, so that performance was possible on Saturday night.
And on the topic of crossover fights, I mean, they're kind of the biggest talk in combat sports right now.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your celebrity matches, your legends matches, your crossover matches. Two of the more recent ones being Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley and Evander Holyfield versus Vitor Belfort. What do you think about these kind of fights and their overall impact on the sport of boxing?
You know, there's two ways to look at this, and that's they shouldn't get the opportunities that other fighters have worked their entire lives for and may never get. And there's also the way of looking at it that they're generating so much publicity, so much attention, so much publicity for our sport that it's never going to be a bad thing. Like, if I was on the undercard of a Jake Paul fight or a Logan Paul fight, the opportunities for me there are endless, like sponsorship, future partnerships, like the amount of people that would see me fight. It's incredible for us fighters. Like, it could, like, put us on a platform that we may never get in just regular boxing. But I'll never speak badly about anyone, especially when all they're trying to do is make some money. Now, when they start trash talking about fighters, it's a different story. You know, I don't encourage that. I don't encourage, I suppose, fighters that haven't dedicated their lives to this, haven't devoted all that time, like Jake Paul, like Logan, speaking badly about those who have. Like, I'm only young in this game, and I've been in it the majority of my life since 9 years old, and I'm 20 years old now. That's 11 years, and I'm still young. I still have another 20 years to go in this sport. So if someone comes in and they're 3 months into training and they start talking badly about me or like someone in my position, it's hard. It's hard to, I suppose, get behind. It's hard to support. But yeah, we're not going to change it. We're not going to get them out of our sport. So we have to, I suppose, work with them and the opportunities that they bring, because they are endless. And, you know, if we can benefit from that, then it's never going to be a bad thing.
And the other side of that coin is these legends fights, you know, legends who are coming out of retirement in their late 40s, early 50s. You know, we saw recently Mike Tyson and Roy Jones, as well as Evander Holyfield last week, who was 58 years old. What do you think about that?
That's a tricky, I suppose, topic, because what happened to Evander Holyfield the other night was painful to watch. You know, you see a legend of a sport going out that way. And that man just wanted to see if he could still do it. But he couldn't, unfortunately. And he could have been badly hurt. And that's, like, thankfully he got out of the ring with his health. But that could have went horribly wrong. That could have went a different way. If he got in there against a young, hungry, like, driven fighter that had bad intentions, it could have been tragic. So these kind of fights where the legends of the game or people that are past it coming back and trying to do it again, it's not a sport for all men. Like, it's not a game. It's not like you're kicking around a football or like hitting a sliotar or something. This is putting your life on the line and someone's coming to fight. So I don't agree with those type of fights. Now, Mike Tyson and Roy Jones, that was an exhibition, and, you know, they knew what they were doing. Like they were like both on the same page. They understood what they were going in there to do. But it's only a matter of time before it's a complete mismatch, and it's an old man getting in against, you know, a young, fit, like boxer in their prime that is hitting with everything they got, and then it's going to be a problem.
Lastly, I just want to ask you about some of the bigger boxing matches coming up. On September 25th, we've got Anthony Joshua and Alexander Yousick. How do you think that fight's going to play out?
I think Yousick will cause some issues. Now I don't see him beating Joshua. I'm choosing Joshua to win that fight. Yousick is an exceptional boxer, you know, but I don't think he can stand there with Joshua or Tyson Fury or even Deontay Wilder. But I think it's going to be a great fight in the early rounds. But I just see Joshua either bullying him or catching clean and finishing it.
Then on October 9th, we've got the Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder trilogy match. How do you see that one playing out?
I see Tyson Fury winning it again unless Deontay Wilder lands, which is why everyone will be watching this fight, because Tyson Fury proved in the last fight that he is a better fighter, he's a better boxer. But like with Deontay Wilder and the power he possesses, it takes one punch, and if you give him another 36 minutes, he's got that much time just to land one punch. So it'll be an interesting one. Everything points towards Tyson Fury just winning it again, if not in an easier fashion. But Deontay Wilder still possesses almost supernatural strength, and anything could happen.
And finally, assuming Joshua and Fury do both win their fights, and in 2022 we finally get, you know, the big one, how do you see that one going?
You know what? That fight will be it will probably be the biggest fight in British history, like having those two lads, because it's the one everyone wants to see. Most people aren't interested in the heavyweight division besides from that fight and that matchup. I don't know who wins that one. I don't, because some days I'll go Tyson Fury, I'll box him. Other days I'll say Joshua will beat him. Right now, I can't answer who I believe will win that fight, but I really hope it happens. Boxing is a strange sport. A lot of politics, a lot of, I suppose, matchmaking, but hopefully that can be made. The contracts were signed for earlier this year, but things happened, and unfortunately that's usually the case in boxing. But I really hope that fight happens, because it would be incredible for the fighters, incredible for their legacies, and even better for the fans.
That's all that we had time for. I'd just like to thank you again for coming on, and congrats again on the victory recently. Hopefully we get to see you back in there soon. Hopefully we get to see you over in Los Angeles, you know.
No worries, man. Thank you.
Thank you.